We are going to focus today just on What Car, our car buying Bible, and this, I can assure you, is a mercifully short presentation. I've got it down to about 10 minutes. I am very much aware that I am all that stands between you and lunch. But what I am going to provide you with will hopefully be very helpful, and it's a snapshot of our latest consumer insight. And the insight delves into new car buying behaviour and attitudes amongst consumers who were surveyed on whatcar.com last month. So we have just over 3,400 consumers who responded to the survey, so a pretty robust group. And they answered questions about their relationships with retailers and what they need when buying a new car. And I have to say, I've watched all the presentations this morning, and I'm relieved that nobody else's statistics as yet conflict with what we've found, thank goodness. We've heard lots of times this morning how challenging the new car market is, but I think those challenges also present significant opportunities for this industry. The opportunity to try different things, to respond to some of those changing market dynamics positively, and to listen to and to take advantage of those consumer cues, because consumers are more vocal than they have perhaps ever been. A slightly depressing lead into lunch. You know, it's been a very turbulent 18 months. I don't think you need me to tell you that. I've got a great quote from Jim Holder, who spoke at last year's summit, our editorial director. He says, "The negativity is set to continue." That's not a great start, is it? With Brexit undermining consumer confidence, further interest rate rises possible, currency swings making cars more expensive, and so on. The perfect storm looks set to be a long storm, and is further complicated by the once in 100 years changing of technology and, of course, the constant impact of digitalisation. But many of the longer-term threats he certainly believes are overstated. Propulsion, so autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles replacing traditional engines, ownership versus usage, and connectivity. But what he most firmly believes, and we certainly agree, is that dealers will ride this storm. So, this is one of the reasons that we believe that to be true. We asked our audience where they believe they will be buying a car in 5 years' time. So this was 3,400 and something of them. The majority of car buyers expect to stick with car dealers, 74% according to our research. Of that number, 60% of people expect to be buying from a car dealership, and 14% expect to buy through a dealer's website. Having said that, in 5 years' time, 21% of consumers see themselves buying from a new online service. Now, we didn't expand on that in the question. It just said, will you buy from a new online service? But 1 in 5 of respondents believe that's where they'll buy, even if they don't know where that is yet. But I think most interestingly, and there's been a lot of talk about the disintermediation of dealers and this idea of buying direct from brands, just 6% of consumers that responded believe they'll be buying cars direct from car manufacturers. So it seems a retailer, be that a car dealer or a third-party service, is still overwhelmingly preferable to buying direct from a manufacturer. Which might help to explain why visits to dealerships are increasing, so a pretty cheery stat which has recently been released. And I think this also supports that argument, because for the overwhelming majority of buyers, car buying is still a considerable purchase. It's expensive, it's emotional, and hopefully it's often very exciting. It certainly is for lots of our readers. So consumers, at the very least, want to have seen and ideally sat in the car they're thinking about buying. But they're doing so all the way through their car buying journey, from the point where they're long and shortlisting, when they're choosing which car they might want to buy, right through to when they've chosen and they're ready to do the deal. When we asked our audience at what point they first visit a dealership, 16% first visit when they're setting out on that research journey. That rises to 28% during their main research process, so when they're shortlisting. 27% only first visit when they're almost ready to buy, and 28% only first visit a dealership when they're actually ready to do a deal. When we asked them what the most important reason was for them visiting a dealership, 61% said it was to see the car. Go figure. 23% said it was to take a test drive, 10% to negotiate a deal, and only 8% cited speaking to a dealer as their primary motivation. That was their most important, to be fair. And when we asked consumers then, how do you expect to get the final price you'll pay for your next car? The answer to this kind of blew us away, really. 2.9% will pay the asking price. Fantastic. We'll forward you their details shortly. 52% expect to get their final price at the dealership, but 44% of respondents expect to find the final price for their next new car online. And that could be through dealer websites, or it could be through a third-party website or marketplace. Next, we asked them about trust and motivation. So the question was, what's the most important thing when choosing where to buy your next new car? Okay, so price clearly dominates and is the primary motivator for over 50% of new car buyers. But trust is also really important, as is service and distance. And this chimes with some of the data that came out of Tim Bond's research earlier. Don't forget they had to state the most important thing rather than order them as a list of important items, which would arguably alter the results here and is something that we can look at. And these findings are certainly supported by Deloitte's 2018 Global Automotive Survey, which found that 61% of consumers wanted to agree a price online before going into a dealership. And finally, we asked them whether they had a preferred dealer, and 20% of them said yes, they did. So high-value customers are still out there, but loyalty has definitely been eroded, with only the older age groups saying that they will buy their next car from their preferred dealer. But of course, that means opportunity abounds for the digitally proactive dealer, which is what today is all about. I think you've seen a version of this in about 3 or 4 presentations now. This is ours with the what car question mark skillfully inserted all the way along the journey. We know that the customer is taking a blended approach to car buying and that it's often a really long and complex process. And consumers are clearly going to be influenced by many factors, and very rarely do they follow a linear path to purchase. So they might watch a TV ad, they might read a review, hopefully on whatcar.com. They're likely to click on a paid search ad, watch videos, as we've heard already, order brochures, and of course, as we've already seen in the research, they are very likely to visit a dealership. But consumers are getting much more confident about how the online-offline research process works and are increasingly adopting a hybrid model when they're buying a new car. Accordingly, many retailers that we work with have also adopted a multi-channel approach, creating multiple touch points with the consumer who is looking for both a physical and online retail experience. But accurately attributing marketing spend is, as a result, almost impossible. So what did ultimately influence that purchase decision? And it's very tempting, I think, to reward the last click source, but as Martin from AutoWeb said earlier, it's really important to attribute the whole customer journey, as challenging as that is, which it definitely is. Inevitably, also, this model has created price-focused buyers, so the decision to buy is often made before the customer feels ready to speak with the dealer in person. And for retailers to maintain healthy margins, they need to engage car buyers much further up the funnel before price becomes the only motivator and results in a low-margin sale. So, how can we help? Well, our business is also evolving. Anyone who studies the media or publishing industries will appreciate the massive change that we've been through ourselves over the last decade. And for us in What Car, until relatively recently, our relationships were primarily with car manufacturers, and our main activities have been car reviews and the car manufacturer-derived advertising that targets those reviews. And car reviews and advice are still the beating heart of What Car and forevermore will be. But we've recognised that as consumer buying journeys are moving increasingly online, we need to extend our role and help consumers find the dealer and the deal they need. We've always had a target price proposition, which was originally marketed through the monthly magazine and in more recent years has been marketed through the What Car website too. And hopefully a few of you are familiar with target price. It's a really, really simple proposition. We mystery shop hundreds of retailers and car manufacturers every month to create a target price that we think customers can comfortably achieve. So it's not the cheapest price in market, but a fair price above which consumers need not pay. And with our newly launched What Car? New Car Buying product, dealers can put their target price in front of our audience, often much earlier in the new car buying process than they might traditionally have been able to do. So when those consumers are still researching which car to buy and still open to influence, not when they're looking for the absolutely best price on a car they've already decided to buy. And it works very simply. Consumers provide some of their details in a safe environment in order to access those prices. Those leads trigger prices from our partner dealers, and a conversation can then begin either through our platform or direct with the dealer, which we encourage people to do. It's very, very early days, big caveats, and we're really excited, though, about what we have delivered so far. There is lots more functionality to come, and any of you who are operating in digital spheres know that there is no endpoint to your digital journeys. That functionality just keeps coming as we learn more and more about our audience. But we know, most importantly, that we're already happily connecting car buyers to car sellers, and that is, after all, the point. Sometimes very, very early in those journeys when they're very influential, all the way through to when those consumers are ready to buy.